Hi, I'm Mary Merola, founder of Junction. Welcome to my kitchen. At this time of year, Rebecca's garden is bursting with the reddest, ripest tomatoes, which is my cue to start on Merola pasta sauce. So let's talk about the tomatoes. I love using aroma style tomato for my pasta sauce. And this particular tomato is called a Tyran Roma style, which is a San Marzano type of tomato. What's nice about this tomato is that it has very few seeds and a nice meaty pulp, which makes excellent pasta sauce. The downside of this tomato is that the skin is a little bit tough. So what I'm going to show you today is how to handle these Roma tomatoes and make an outstanding pasta sauce for your family. So the first thing I do is I take this tomato and I make an X on the top and on the stem side. Now some people only do one side, but I find that the more opportunity for hot water to get under the skin, the easier it is to peel the skin. You can see that I'm using a ceramic paring knife, and this is a super sharp knife by Kyocera, one of my favorites. We've carried this at Junction for over 25 years. The blade is actually 10 times sharper than a stainless knife. And as you can see, I'm just gliding right through the ends of these tomatoes. Behind me on the stove, I have a pot of salted boiling water. So very soon, when I finish this, we're going to be carefully placing these tomatoes in the boiling water in order for the skin to release. Now be careful when you're placing these tomatoes because you don't want them splashing and burning you. I'm going to set a timer for probably around 10 minutes. The water will come back to a boil. And off to the side, I have a stainless bowl with some ice cold water, because as soon as those tomatoes get to their boiling and the skin starts coming off, I want to immerse them into an ice bath. And that will stop the cooking and it'll also make the skin easier to remove. So here are my ingredients for the pasta sauce. First of all, I've got fresh garlic. This is a white onion, which I think has a much better taste in the pasta sauce. And my favorite, of course, the shallot. You've seen this in a lot of my cooking. Now we can chop a fine dice with our knife, but I'm going to show you a different approach today. This is a professional style mandolin by one of my favorite suppliers, Progressive. And here's what I love about this mandolin. First of all, I don't have to hold it. It's sitting right on the counter with non-skid feet. Secondly, it has a super big hopper. And if you notice this piece, it's got these 4 little prongs, which I can press into the onion. So what I'm going to do is I have this set with blades here open and blades here for the dice. And here's the process. I have it here. I'm not touching anything close to the slicer. I go down this way, back, and then you turn the dial. Down, back, turn again. Pressing down slightly. And look at that. This is our nice fine dice. Everything is even, which I love. And this is going to make a fabulous pasta sauce. Okay. So now we're going to move into the shallot. And as you remember, this is a little bit more delicate piece. So we're going to do this by hand, keeping the root intact. Remember, that's our placeholder with the shallot. And then holding Curl your fingers. Now some people say, why do we need an onion and a shallot and the garlic? My opinion, the complexity of these three ingredients gives an added dimension to your pasta sauce. This is our garlic. I've already peeled and trimmed. So I'm going to do something a little different with this garlic because for the pasta sauce, we don't want it diced or sliced. We actually want this garlic to be smashed. And a technique I'd like to show you is taking your coarse kosher sea salt and actually smashing the garlic right into the salt. And this really helps release the oils within the garlic. And for a twist, I'm going to add yellow pepper. This will give a little bit of color, and it will also provide some sweetness to the pasta sauce. Now, a little wine. Yes, it's going in the pasta sauce, don't worry. We're pretty close on the tomatoes, and I'm going to take this moment to chop my parsley. Again, kind of a coarse chop on this parsley. This is a flat, called a flat Italian parsley. Keep your non-cutting hand on the top of the knife, much less chance of you cutting yourself. Let's take a look at the tomatoes and see how they're doing. I think they're just about right. So I'm going to turn off my heat, and with a skimmer, take them directly to the ice water bath. So our tomatoes are in the ice bath and they're coming along nicely. I'll let them sit for another moment, but we can get the rest of the pasta sauce started. Our pan is on about medium right now, and I like to work in a large saute pan because it gives me more surface area for the onion and shallot and garlic. At this point, I'm going to start with the yellow pepper, and here's our white onion. And see how nice a big pan works with this application, because I can spread things out. Here's our garlic, and remember we've got a little bit of salt in the garlic, and the shallot. Now that's really pretty. Time for a little bit more salt, and I've got this about medium-low. I'll keep an eye on it. We don't want anything to burn. Now it's time to get serious with these tomatoes. So here we are, and this is exactly what we want to accomplish. Peeling the skin right off the tomatoes. Now don't be concerned when you get to the end, because it's going to be stubborn, and that skin is going to want to remain on the back end of the tomato. People often ask about the San Marzano tomato and what makes it so special. And many of you probably know this, but the volcanic soil from Mount Vesuvius around the city of Naples is really a contributing factor to the intensity of the San Marzano tomato. We don't have that in Kansas City, but I have to say I'm pretty proud of Rebecca's tomatoes. I'm going to move my heat up just a tiny bit, and now I'm going to begin to mix, coating everything with the olive oil. It appears that our peppers, onion, shallot, and garlic are just about ready. And here's, again, one of the reasons I love these tomatoes. Notice, not a lot of juice and not a lot of seeds. We've taken the skin off, so we're eliminating that issue. And these will break down considerably during the cooking process. And now I'm going to show you my next little trick with the pasta sauce. So as you can see, we've got some oil coming to the edge here. I'm going to move all the other ingredients to the side, and this is when I put in crushed red pepper flakes, because I like a little spice in my pasta sauce. And you put that in the oil and you allow that to toast. This, of course, is a personal preference, not required. So we don't want those crushed red pepper flakes to burn. That's pretty important, otherwise they'll be bitter. That is the same thing with our garlic. Burnt garlic makes a nasty pasta sauce. So now I'm mixing again. Raise my heat up high, and this is when the tomatoes go in. Now I'm going to cover this, put it on a back burner, and previously I drained all the tomato juice off of these tomatoes. And what I'm going to do right now is reduce that tomato juice. This is kind of a precautionary measure because I never know exactly how much juice those tomatoes are going to emit. So if I condense this tomato juice, I have a backup for extending and stretching my sauce, and rather than adding water or chicken stock or vegetable stock, I have the opportunity to use the actual tomato juice and enhance the taste of my sauce. We're going to let this cook about 15 minutes and I'll come back for the next step. So we here have the reduction of our tomato sauce, and we've reduced it to about 1/3 of its original amount. I'm not going to add any tomato sauce just yet, but I am going to reach over, take a final sip of my wine. And this is the time to add the red wine. Once again, it enhances the taste, it gives it some dimension. I happen to be using a Merlot, but really any good quality red wine will do. My rule is if I don't want to drink it, I should not cook with it, and I'm very happy to drink that wine. I also put a little bit of sugar into the pasta sauce. There's a lot of controversy about sugar, but in my opinion, when you use a garden tomato, it brings out the sweetness, and you don't need a lot. This is about 2 teaspoons. I'm going to cover this, let it continue to cook at about medium. So the pasta sauce is still cooking, but I'm going to move into what goes into the pasta sauce. One of the great things about a basic marinara sauce is it becomes the base for whatever you want to put in it. For an example, my mother loved Italian sausage in her pasta sauce. My Aunt Rose was a fan of meatballs. My Aunt Mary absolutely loved shrimp in her pasta sauce. And my cousin Dina, she likes neck bones. So whenever you have a really good pasta sauce, you can do anything with it. Rebecca, however, is also a big fan of shrimp. So I'm going to tell you how we do shrimp in our home. In Kansas City, we don't get a lot of fresh shrimp. So I have to find a good, fresh, frozen shrimp. And that's really not a problem. And you'll notice that I dry my shrimp with the shells on very carefully. And I'll explain that in just a moment. Shrimp that you buy fresh frozen usually have a nice soft shell. So the trick to peeling the shrimp is to get the shell off without losing the tail of the shrimp. Now sometimes if you have a little tougher shell, you'll need to use a paring knife to get that last little bit of shell off. But these are fairly easy. And these are kind of small shrimp. They're not super big. So there's a couple key things in cooking shrimp. First of all, I like a light coating on my shrimp. So I use an all-purpose flour and then my seafood seasoning, Merola's magical seafood seasoning. Let's take a look at the pasta sauce again. Now here's what I want you to look at carefully. The olive oil is coming to the top of the pasta sauce. That is your signal that the sauce is just about ready. So we have a couple of options here. This is a chunky pasta sauce right now. And if you like a chunky pasta sauce, we could leave this as it is and add our herbs. I'm sure you're wondering, why isn't she adding the herbs? We'll talk about that in a moment. But I would like to make this a little bit smoother. So the perfect tool for that is the hand blender, also called an immersion blender. So press this in as a safety measure, turn it on, and I'm going to start at low. Now remember, when I reduced the tomato juice, this is exactly why I did that. Because I need a little bit more liquid and my final amount of juice. So now I'm going to take a moment, bring this up to temp again, and I'm going to let this cook uncovered for probably about 5 minutes. Now it's time to talk about the herbs. Earlier, I chopped the parsley. Now it's time for the basil. And the basil is always much more fragile than the parsley. You'll see I'm taking the stems off. That we're going to take these basil leaves and roll them like a cigar and do this nice, beautiful chiffonade cut. I'm sure you've been thinking this whole time, why isn't she putting the herbs in earlier? And that is a very common mistake with pasta sauce. If you put the herbs in too early, they really lose all their taste and actually can become a bit bitter. So I've learned over time, the hard way, put your herbs in at the end. Now it's time to add the herbs. Look at the pasta sauce bubbling. And my mother would say, the pasta sauce is laughing. And that was always her way of knowing it was ready for this final step. So here is the chopped basil, and I'm adding the chopped parsley. In my family, oregano has no place in pasta sauce. Oregano is reserved for pizza. Parsley and basil are part of the pasta sauce. And that's just how it is in the Merola family. Now we're going to let this cook for a few more moments, and then we're going to take it off the stove. And this is a 100% semolina fettuccine. It's one of the favorites in our home, and it holds up beautifully to this robust sauce and pairs deliciously with the shrimp. So now we're getting ready to saute the shrimp. And the first thing I've done is taken some olive oil, heated it up, and then prepared to infuse it with garlic. And these are what we call the garlic crispies. The water is boiling, and I'm going to place our fettuccine in the boiling water. The key thing about cooking pasta is to give it a lot of water, because that way the pasta doesn't stick. Salt the water. Do not put any oil in the water. If you put oil in your pasta water, the sauce will not stick to the pasta. So that's a really bad idea. here we are. We have flour along with the Merola Magical seafood seasoning. And I'm lightly dredging in the flour and seasoning mixture. Be sure you coat them thoroughly. But now you have to move pretty quick in order to saute them. And we're ready. Take them by their tail. And put the shrimp right in the olive oil. Now whatever you do not crowd the shrimp. What we're looking for is the shrimp to turn pink. And our tails are already starting to turn pink. This is a very fast process. Okay, I'm touching them. I'm getting a little bit of bounce. So our pasta is ready. I'm using the remainder of the oil after having sauteed our shrimp, and I'm going directly from the pot. I love doing it this way because I get the starch from the pasta and I still have a little bit of pasta water. And now let's move over to our sauce. We don't need too much sauce. Our pasta has absorbed the sauce nicely, so it's time to plate it up. I'm going to put a tiny bit of basil, garnish, and remember these little garlic crispies? They go right on the top. There we are, fettuccine with sauteed shrimp and homemade pasta sauce. I'm Mary Merola. Thank you for spending time with me today in my kitchen. Shop us at Function Junction at Crown Center in Kansas City, Missouri, or visit us at functionjunction.com. We sell cool cooking stuff to give you kitchen confidence.